Welcome to Slooh and our special coverage tonight. We're breaking away from our usual live views tonight to bring you this live broadcast all about the near-Earth asteroid 2015 YB. But we prefer the name the Flea. Why the Flea? Well, it's small, fast, and very difficult to catch. And astronomers kind of feel like the Real Madrid footballers, the soccer player, the defense there, trying to cover Lionel Messi. So that's why it's called the Flea. Now, if you've got any questions tonight, just send them to @Slooh, and I or my guest, Slooh astronomer Bob Berman, will attempt to answer those for you. I did have one message from Jude Daly coming in a little bit earlier, and she asked, how can I get involved with hunting and monitoring these near-Earth asteroids? Well, Jude, anybody can join Slooh and use the telescopes that these live images are coming in from right now. And we have our own program there that trains you how to do it, everything you need to know, and you'll soon be helping to track and monitor these near Earth asteroids. We're going to be talking all about what is it? What is the Flea? Where is it? How fast is it? When was it discovered? And what we're trying to do tonight in a moment when Slooh astronomer Bob Berman joins us. But I just want to remind Slooh members, don't forget you can use the Star Share camera. And any of these images that you see on screen, you can snap and download or share images of the Flea. That is if we catch it, because it's tiny, absolutely tiny. Now then, what have we got? Let's pull in straight away while we're looking at these live images from Slooh's Canary Islands Observatory. Let's call in Slooh astronomer Bob Berman. Hi, Bob.
Hey, great to be here. Very exciting, Paul.
It is. Now, this is a breaking story. So a near-Earth asteroid, Bob, you know, we're hoping to see it in these images, but we're going to be, this is going to be a really, really difficult one. But let's go back to basics for viewers who don't know what a near-Earth asteroid is, and let's maybe put people straight on the risk of this one tonight before we even get on to what it is. Is there any risk with this thing, Bob?
With this one, no, but it's awfully close. It's wow, only discovered 2 days ago, passing only, 1/5 the distance to the moon. The moon is so close. We astronomers talk about things in terms of light speed. The nearest star is about 4.5 light years away. The sun is 8 light minutes away. Well, if you could shoot light at this object, it would get there in half a second. It's not even a
I
half
mean,
a
Bob, this thing
light
is
second.
coming nearly as close as our geosynchronous satellites, isn't it? But what is this object? Is it, a lump of rock? Is it snow or ice, like a comet? What is it?
Well, it's probably asteroidal, judging from its orbit, even though the orbit's just being refined because it's so newly found. Its speed indicates it's probably asteroidal in origin. It certainly doesn't have a tail. It doesn't have an albedo, a brightness that would resemble a comet. Still, at 35,000 miles away, and this is the night of closest approach. I mean, you're right. 22,000 miles up are the nearest, are not the nearest. All of the geostationary
Yeah.
satellites orbit at that distance. 22,000. This is 35,000. So it's barely 50% farther than our beloved Earth satellites that give us all our TV pictures. And we should also remember that when something of exactly this size burst over Chelyabinsk on February 15th, 2 years ago, back in 2013, it injured 1,500 people. And if it actually made it all the way to the ground, this was from Chelyabinsk, we'd be
Yeah.
seeing things like this on its way in. And if it actually made it to the ground, it could destroy a city. So we're saying
So
it's tiny. Sure, 20 meters or maybe around 60 feet across. Tiny so far as celestial objects go, but plenty big enough to cause us trouble.
well, I think we've got a graphic, Bob, that kind of puts this thing in perspective. A lot of people can't really imagine how big this thing is. So we'll pull that up, and we put this poor little soccer player. Look, he's down there on the left, and we've got two asteroids showing here, Bob. Now, why is that? Because we're saying that both of these are the Flea compared to poor old Lionel Messi. Why have we got two asteroids there?
Because I believe we have that up because we're not really sure of the size. This is we're still
Yeah.
refining the orbit. It's small enough so that even finding it and pinpointing its orbit is still a challenge. 2 days out from its discovery, it's somewhere in between the size of this one and the size of that one. And so on the cosmic scale, when you picture the moon, even okay, it's not so large compared to something that you would not want crashing into your neighborhood or even exploding above your neighborhood. That's another story altogether.
No, we shouldn't. So let's go back to the live images. And what should our viewers be looking out for here? And don't forget, if you're a Slooh member, if you're watching at slooh.com, below the main video show that everybody's seeing us in here, below that you'll see the new Star Share camera, and you can change between the different telescope views. If you think you see the asteroid in this image, snap the button, press the button, and you will download or you can share an image of that. So, Bob, what are viewers looking out for in this live image from the Canary Islands?
And of course, you're the expert on this. I'll answer the question, Paul. But when I think over the years here at Slooh, the things that you have done, capturing asteroids of various kinds, coming to different distances from us, you've done a beautiful job. There's two ways of doing it for our viewers. One is to track the stars. That's what we're doing here. And then the stars would look like little dots. In that case, this asteroid, because it's moving so fast, we're talking about 14 kilometers per second or about 30,000 miles per hour,
Wow.
that we'd actually see it on our short, even though it's live, these are slight time exposures. So it would show up as not a clear pinpoint of light, but a little bit of an elongated object, faint, elongated streak, we could say. And that's what we're looking for here, right? Am I right?
Absolutely. And, you talked about the uncertainty of where this object is, Bob. And, it was discovered 2 days ago by the Catalina Sky Survey. They discover a huge number of these objects. Now,
Yes,
we checked,
because
there were only
they.
10 missions. So there were only 10 observations made of this as of this morning. And what we heard just before we were coming on air was that there was an erroneous observation within that group by a chap called H. Sato with some observations he made from New Mexico. Now, this totally distorted and skewed all of the orbit calculations. So the Flea was going to be really, really difficult to find in the first place, but you throw these inaccurate measurements in, these inaccurate observations in, and wow, I mean, this is going to be so difficult to find.
It's so
And
difficult now. Now, the name you mentioned, now exactly what is the name and the address for that matter of this fellow who gave us all the wrong
well,
data that's messing us up?
one of the things here, Bob, that Slooh has a whole bunch of members who use the telescopes, and there's one particular group called the A Team, and they monitor and track asteroids all the time. And they were making the comment this evening that they've been really surprised at the particular observations that this particular person has been making to the Minor Planet Center, because they know what equipment he's using. He's using a telescope in New Mexico, and the observations that he's reporting just kind of really aren't possible with that equipment. So they were kind of scratching their heads when they saw, this guy's observations coming in. But anyway, what we've got to do is keep an eye on these images, and that's what the A team are doing as well. And if we spot that tiny streak, this tiny, tiny asteroid whizzing through this image, then they're going to perform some measurements of it to accurately pinpoint its location. They submit that to the Minor Planet Center, and that helps us pin down where these rocks are, because so many of them get lost immediately after their discovery. So this monitoring that amateur astronomers do is really quite important, isn't it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Especially in the case of these Earth grazing asteroids. Now, this is one that in its orbit around the sun, in about 2 years, it goes out between Mars and Jupiter and then comes in within Earth's orbit. And that's the trouble. Crossing Earth's orbit, that's what can cause us grief. The question is, and we don't know the answer to this yet, is whether this is one time and it's going to come back to haunt us periodically, or
Yeah.
whether it's this is a one-time visit, whether in fact this very close visit to Earth will perturb its orbit. I wouldn't be surprised, because we're so big and it's so small,
Yeah.
that it'll fling it into a new orbital path that will keep it safely away from us forever. It'll be interesting to see what's the outcome, and we'll know
It
that
will.
eventually, but not right now.
And I think the story that we at Slooh have been, very forceful getting out to the media is, it's not just a tiny rock like this that is being discovered just a few days before it makes a close approach to Earth. We specifically don't try and scaremonger, but this is a real risk to this planet, and there are some very, very large asteroids, certainly, that would be quite devastating on Earth, that are only being discovered a matter of weeks before making a close approach to Earth. So I really want to stress that this is an area that amateur astronomers can get involved with, and really add a huge amount to the science, both in discovery but also monitoring these objects. Bob, what are we looking at here in this diagram?
This is a plotting the trace of Earth crossing and near Earth asteroids. Look at these orbits and look how many of them. They look so dense in there that you wonder how we don't get clobbered all the time by them. But it
Yeah,
just shows how many there are and why it's so important for the Slooh members and for the public to get involved in the funding that allows us to keep
yeah,
tracking these things. Remember, when the first one was discovered on the opening day of the 19th century, and then within a few years, we found more and more and more. Those are large objects. Those were
mm,
always several hundred miles in diameter, Ceres, Vesta, Juno, Pallas. But it's only relatively recently, as our capabilities have increased, that we're finding so many more smaller ones, closer ones, near Earth objects, and we're realizing what the peril is. Not to alarm anyone, not to say don't worry about cholesterol and high blood pressure and put this above everything else, but hey, shouldn't we be looking for these things? You're right,
yeah.
we should.
Yeah. And of course, a very recent example was on Halloween, the Halloween asteroid Spooky. Slooh named it Spooky. And my gosh, I mean, that was when those first radar images came through. So this is a very large asteroid that came nearly within the same distance as the moon, wasn't discovered, very early on. We actually think now that it was the core of a dormant comet. But when those first radar images came in, we'd already named it Spooky. It was making its closest approach on Halloween. And what do we get? This image. Look at this, Bob. We couldn't believe our eyes when these first radar images came in. And this
It looks like a
skull,
skull,
this,
doesn't it? It looks like a
yeah,
human skull in space. I
we,
mean,
if we could have orchestrated
you
that,
can't make this
we
stuff
would.
up, can you? You can't make this
You
stuff up.
You can't. Now, Bob, we've got, before we tell viewers about a really exciting event that we've got planned for Christmas Eve, we've got a question coming in from Josh on Twitter. Don't forget, you can send us questions to @Slooh. He's asking, can we tag the Flea with technology and then follow it with computer guided telescopes? So I guess he's saying, could we get something to it to tag it electronically? Like shops tag clothing or something like that. Would that be possible?
Well, perhaps in the far future, not currently. Among many reasons why not is you need a pretty significant lead time to even calculate what the orbit is and to see if it's feasible for us to launch something that can catch up to it. In the case of an object that we're only discovering a few days ahead of time, of course that's not possible. And by the
Yeah.
time this thing goes on, it's going to be out of reach of us. We could not do that no matter what the technology is. But for the future, perhaps.
But, you know, we've been following as well at Slooh, Comet 67P and the Rosetta mission, ESA's Rosetta mission, and they've flown a spacecraft to the comet. They've actually landed the Philae lander on the surface of the comet. So we have done that to a comet. And of course, I believe NASA, are they not planning a similar trip to an asteroid, to land on an asteroid?
Yes, yes, as long as you have the time. And then you also have the liberty of choosing the object that it's in an orbit. For example, generally you don't want something with a high eccentricity because if you're going to send something from Earth, it's going to have a path relative to the sun that's not highly eccentric. Otherwise, you're going to deal with velocities, relative velocities that may make slowing down and catching up with it a lot more difficult. So we have the liberty because there's so many thousands of these, both asteroids of every kind, and even comets, that we can pick and choose the ones we want to. That's most technologically feasible, really.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And we'll also, Josh, talk a little bit about how you can use Slooh's telescopes, because they're computer-guided telescopes as well that you can control from the comfort of your armchair. But just before we go to a short commercial break, I want to tell you something really important that we've got planned for Christmas Eve. We have got Slooh's Santa Scope up and running just in time for the holidays. And on Christmas Eve, we're going to be providing live views of the Christmas full moon. There's a full moon on Christmas Day, and you'll get the chance to catch a glimpse of jolly old Saint Nick and his sleigh and reindeer. And you can use the Starshare camera, which we're making free to the public that night, so kids around the world can snap a picture of Santa just in case he happens to pass across the live telescope views of the moon. And to finish off that very special night on Christmas Eve, we are going to be showing you live images of the Christmas comet. I'll talk to Bob a little bit more about that. We're going to go away for a really quick short commercial break. We'll tell you more about that Christmas comet and talk more about the near-Earth asteroid, the Flea, after this short commercial break. This is amazing. The Slooh Santa Scope has spotted some activity on the North Pole. It's jolly good news. Looks like Santa and his team are ready for launch. Woo! And they're away! Okay, well, we've lost them for the moment, but be sure to check back in with Slooh as we track Santa on Christmas Eve. You can use Slooh's Starshare camera to snap and share your very own photos, and it's absolutely free. Incredible, really quite extraordinary. I'm totally gobsmacked. Apologies for that slightly longer break than we had planned. There were problems at Houston, apparently. Not here in the UK where I am. Now, we are back watching what we hope are live images from Slooh's Canary Islands Observatory of the Flea, this near-Earth asteroid. Now, Bob, I haven't seen any reports yet if anybody's spotted it. We are looking in this star field. We're 8,000 feet on top of a volcano. That's where these telescopes are based. We're looking at a star field here, and viewers are keeping an eye open for this faint dash, which is the Flea crossing the field of view. Is that right?
That's right. And we're looking in the right spot, at least based on the trajectory, the orbital parameters, just 2 days of viewing plus at least one wrong bit of data in there. But we think we're close. You know, you always refine an orbit. The more observations you have, the better it can be refined. But I believe
Yeah.
we're in the ballpark there, and it's a very faint object, and it will show up as a streak. So I'm still optimistic that our Slooh members are going to see it.
Yeah, well, I'm slightly less optimistic here, Bob, just because this one was going to be difficult enough to find because of its size and its speed, and with these errant observations going into the mix to calculate its orbit, that's going to make it even more difficult to find. And in fact, we covered another very large near-Earth asteroid which was discovered. So millions of dollars are spent every year discovering these objects, but because no one was actively monitoring this huge asteroid, Moby Dick, right? It had disappeared. We had lost it again. And this is why, it's so important for amateur astronomers or anybody. You don't have to be an amateur astronomer. You can learn to be an amateur astronomer. In fact, all you've got to do is go outside in your own backyard, look up at the sky, and you are an amateur astronomer. But if you come along to Slooh, join Slooh, and you can join the Near-Earth Asteroid Monitoring Program and learn how to do it, control the telescopes so that we don't lose track of where these are. Bob, we got another Twitter question coming in from Cindy. Now, what is the brightest star in the southeast quadrant? And what does
Well, early in
Slooh
the evening,
mean?
that's Sirius. That's the dog star. And the way you can confirm that you're seeing it, we're talking about, let's say local time, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight. That'll be when it'll be in the southeast. By far the brightest star these nights. Here's how you can be sure. If you can spot Orion's belt, famous 3 stars in a row, follow it down and to the left. And if it points almost exactly, points at least somewhat towards that brilliant bluish white star, you found the dog star, Sirius.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And
Unless our observer is doing her observations just before dawn, in that case, the brightest star is not a star, but the planet Venus. So it
let's
depends
come
on
on to
when
that,
you're
Bob.
looking.
Let's go over actually at the end of this show a few of the fabulous objects that people can see in those dawn early skies, because we can also then talk about the Christmas comet, this
The
beautiful,
Christmas
beautiful
comet,
object.
Catalina. That's so exciting.
So
Yes, it's
we'll
so
we'll tell
exciting.
viewers exactly where to find that, but let's just take a hop back, a hop back. Do you like that? For the Flea. I'm very sorry, everybody. It's late here in the UK. Bob, let's give a little roundup. What is this object? Why is it important? Why should we be bothered about it if it's 30,000 miles away from us?
Well, 30,000 miles, just to review, our Earth satellites, the geostationary ones that give us our TV pictures, are 22,300 miles up. So you're talking about an object that's only 50% farther away, 5 times closer than the moon, close enough so that you could send a flash of light there, point a laser beam at it, it would hit it in less than a half a second.
Wow.
And it's not really tiny. Sure, it may only be 50 feet across, might be only that small, but that was the same size as the one that injured 1,500 people by blowing up over Chelyabinsk on February 15th, 2013, just a couple of years ago. So, plus, what it means is that these objects can sneak up on us. If
They
it was
can.
only found 2 days ago, that means, whoa, we don't know what's out there
Yeah.
if things like this can suddenly appear and then reach their closest to Earth only 2 days later.
Bob, we're we've been talking about the Chelyabinsk meteor that we're seeing here that burnt up in the atmosphere. But I think it was 2004, wasn't it? The very first asteroid, 2014 double A, the first asteroid that was discovered that year on January the 1st, actually impacted Earth somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean. And there have been other very recent impacts. We've also seen impacts on the moon and of Jupiter, of fairly large objects. So we know that this does happen. And the point that you make there is it's when they come out of nowhere with no warning. We don't stand a chance of doing anything about them, but we are working, aren't we, on longer term strategies. So if we were to spot one of these objects, a Slooh member discovers a very large asteroid that's coming in, it's on a trajectory to Earth, but it's not going to happen for another 10 years. Could we do something about that?
Yes, we probably could. And even if we had 2 weeks notice, we could refine the orbit so that even if it was going to hit us, we would know where on Earth.
Mm.
Well enough so that if you wanted to get in your car or get away from that particular region, you'd have that option if you were particularly worried about it. So, any advance notice is better than none.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, if you want to be involved with actually finding and monitoring near-Earth asteroids and potentially hazardous asteroids and comets, plus actually imaging anything, join Slooh. You can control the telescopes. You can also join as a normal member and use our new StarShare camera with live views from Slooh's telescope network every night. And you can snap and share your own images. And I'll tell you, we've been seeing some fabulous objects recently. Now, Bob, we still have not seen this telltale streak that would show us that this asteroid has passed in front of the telescopes tonight. So I think some more work's required on this, more observations are required from Slooh members. Hopefully somebody will pick this object up again, be able to measure its position, help us determine the orbit so that we can keep an eye on this thing.
Yes, and Slooh has done such a great job. You, Paul, have done such a great job. I can't even recount how many near Earth objects, how many asteroids have passed close where we did look at the screen and showed it streaking. And then you created a time lapse video shortly thereafter, actually showing it tumbling among the background stars. So we've done that here at Slooh over and over and over again. And this was just perhaps a little bit too little advance notice to refine the orbital parameters and really pin it down. But our track record is pretty good. So,
but it's still a big story, and there is. Look at that, Bob.
Yes.
Trisha in the studio tonight in Slooh Studio at Slooh HQ in Connecticut, doing a marvelous job, as if by cue. Here is one of those time lapses. This is of the potentially hazardous asteroid Spooky. This one that came in from nowhere, very short notice, very large object, and there you can see it traveling across the screen in this time lapse from left to right. So
yes, and not an
animation.
animation. Let's let everybody be clear. This is not some kind of computer simulation, computer graphics. This is the actual image of Spooky taken only a little more than a month ago, as we saw it here at Slooh, which is
absolutely
amazing.
More accurately described as a time lapse, where I've strung together a lot of those images to turn into that time lapse animation. So yes, thanks, Bob, for that. Now, listen, before we go, we haven't seen the Flea tonight, but let's tell viewers what they can see if they get up early in the morning. Now, this is our special low light camera above the Canary Islands Observatory. Over on the left there, you can see one of the domes, which is fully open with the big half-meter telescope pointing out the top of it. Slooh members are controlling that right now. Bob, have a look at this sky. Tell us what people can see when it comes up to dawn, because this is where a lot of the interesting objects are, aren't they? The hours before dawn?
Yes, just before dawn, you'll see Jupiter, which we're seeing as that bright object on the left side in Leo. And then just before dawn, a little bit to its left, we don't see this in this image, but you will if you get up just before daybreak, low in the east, the brightest thing of all is Venus as a lovely morning star. And the person who
Mm.
called earlier, I suspect, was seeing something that will still be out at dawn. Right to the right of center, there's an orange star that's Betelgeuse. And then below it is the Belt of Orion, the famous 3 stars in a row. And look how that points to the bottom left to that bright bluish star, clearly blue in this picture, which is
Yeah.
the dog star Sirius, which also happens to be the very closest star that the naked eye can see if you live in the northern hemisphere, the UK, America, Canada, Japan. That's the closest star you can see, only 8.65 light years. That's really essentially why it's so brilliant. I mean, it's a little bigger than our sun, 2.4 times the mass of the sun, but its closeness is its calling card there. And there it is, the dog star out starting just before midnight. It's quite nicely up in the southeast, and then it's still out just before dawn with Jupiter there in the east and Venus below it. Ah, lovely time to do stargazing, either with the Slooh telescopes or just with your naked eye. Gorgeous.
Absolutely. Now, on Christmas Eve, we've got a really special event lined up. We've got Slooh's Santa Scope is going to be up and running in time for Christmas Eve. It's the first full moon that occurs on Christmas Day, for I think it's nearly 40 years, and it won't happen again until 2037 or something like that. Now, we have got a special show lined up for you here. There it is, 7 p.m. Eastern. This is one for the kids. We are going to have live views direct from the Canary Islands Observatory of this full moon. And the kids can use the Santa Scope and Slooh Star Share camera, which is going to be made free that night for everybody, just in case they happen to see Santa and his sleigh crossing in front of the moon, and they can hit the button and they can download or they can share their own image. Catch Santa in the act before bedtime. So now, Bob, at the end of that show, on Christmas Eve, we have got a very, very special target. Now, astronomers who investigate historical occurrences think that the Star of Bethlehem could have been a comet, don't they?
You know, you're setting me up for something that I've written about extensively, and I can't go along with that because every planetarium director knows that you really can't follow an actual object in the sky, whether it was a comet, Jupiter alone in Aries, as some have recently suggested, a supernova. If you try to go in that direction, everything moves. The only objects that don't move, of course, are in the north. Polaris, the North Star, is glued in
Mm.
place, but that would eliminate many of the explanations. In any case, the Magi were not going north. They were heading toward the southwest to get to Bethlehem. So no scientific explanation really works. Most scholars really think it was an astrological omen. After all, the account written in Matthew a century after the death of Christ did not appear in Luke. And there's every indication that it was something astrological. Of course, we in the sciences won't touch astrology, and neither will the church. So we pretty much are going to ignore that as an explanation. But maybe we can
But
leave it at
this
that. We are going to have a nice Christmas comet, though, this year.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to be showing. So this is midnight Eastern on Christmas Eve. This is how you can see your own Christmas in. This is the Christmas comet, Comet Catalina. Slooh
I think
members
it's going
are
to be quite
enjoying this
nice.
every morning. It's showing 2 tails here, Bob. We've got one load of tails going off to the right and another load going down and left. Why has the comet got 2 tails?
Oh, well, this is very special. It's an anti-tail. You don't see that very often. Usually, comets with 2 tails have them streaking in pretty much the same direction. You have a
Mm.
plasma or ion tail, and you have the dust tail of the comet. Look at that green color caused by diatomic carbon or cyanogen, or a combination of the two. The interesting thing about this is we thought this was going to be a naked eye comet, but in
We
September, as
did.
it approached its perihelion, it really stopped brightening up. So when it whipped around the sun on November 15th at perihelion, it just didn't brighten as we expected it to. But instead of a naked eye comet, we have a comet that is performing in such an unusual, beautiful way and is so stunning through the Slooh telescopes that this is going to be every bit the treat that I think we hoped for. Now, naked eye observers, look for the star Arcturus on New Year's Eve and one day later, because this comet is going to be
Yeah.
touching the famous orange star Arcturus. And if you can't find it, well, look just before dawn. It'll be high in the sky, high in the east. Follow the Big Dipper's handle. The famous saying is, you arc the handle to Arcturus. So just arc the Big Dipper's handle. Everybody can find the plow or the Big Dipper. Follow it to Arcturus. Point your binoculars at Arcturus, and you have a decent chance, if you're away from the lights of a big city, of seeing it. Better still, watch it here at Slooh, because the images that we're getting are really doing it justice.
Yeah. Every single morning. Now, Bob, we've been talking about the Flea, the near-Earth asteroid that was discovered only 2 days ago, making its closest approach to Earth tonight. We knew this one was going to be incredibly difficult to catch tonight, but more observations are required to determine its orbit. So the story is there that we need more people monitoring these asteroids and searching for them, because who knows, one of them might have our name on it. Hopefully not. And there's no risk to this one. We do know that this is far enough away that this one's not going to impact. Now, just before we go, Bob, our producer is telling us that a member has got an image, a viewer has seen an image and think they've seen something. What can you see in this, Bob? I'm just going to get this on my
I'm
screen
going
a
to
little
put on
bit
my reading
larger.
glasses here, and really, I've got my reading glasses on. I'm inspecting the screen, and I think you're probably doing the same thing, Paul, in these
I
live
am.
images. I'm looking all around to see a streak. I see something that looks like it could be a bit of a streak, a little bit below center, that has a
I do.
slight.
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I also
But
see a potential one just top right of center as well. Now, this is one of the problems when we're hunting for these objects. There are a lot of other things that can also appear as a little white streak. There are known asteroids, of course, but there are also cosmic ray hits. This is a high energy particle that's coming from outer space or the sun, and it hits the CCD chip on the camera, and it can cause a little streak. So who knows? Let's have a look at that afterwards. I'm not sure which viewers saw that, but you can email me, paul@slooh.com, and we'll investigate that image a little bit more. And if you've caught it, we'll make some measurements of it, submit it to the Minor Planet Center, and you may have just helped us pin down the Flea. So congratulations and good searching for that. And our producer is circling that. So we will take another view at that after the show. So thank you very much for spotting that. Bob, thank you very much. You're going to be joining us for a show on Monday, I believe.
yes, we're going to do this solstice. We're going to have live views through our Slooh affiliate solar telescope, Matt Francis at Prescott Observatory, and we're going to be celebrating the solstice. That'll be a lot of fun. Winter solstice on this Monday at 12 noon Eastern.
Yeah, and if viewers have not seen the solar images that come from our partner at the Prescott Observatory, Matt Francis, there, prepare to be stunned. And there's quite a lot of solar activity going on at the moment. So that is a great way of seeing in the December solstice. And Bob will explain everything about the December solstice to you during that show. So, Bob, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Your insights on near-Earth objects and your encyclopedic knowledge of astronomy is always welcome, a joy to listen to. So we'll see you on Monday. Thank you very much for tonight. Now, I just want to remind you once again, our special show on Christmas Eve. We have got Slooh's Santa Scope up and running just in time for the holidays, and we're going to be providing live views of the Christmas full moon, and you'll get a chance to catch a glimpse of jolly old Saint Nick as he passes in front of the live telescope views. So make sure the kids come out, and they'll be able to use our StarShare camera and that's going to be made available free that night to everybody, and kids around the world can snap a picture of Santa and share it with their friends and family. That broadcast starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. For those of you watching from Slooh's 24-hour channel, we are going to be returning back to live telescope views from the Canary Islands. We've got some beautiful members have scheduled some wonderful objects coming up. I know the Orion Nebula is going to be coming up a little bit later on, and I believe I saw the Trapezium Nebula as well as Comet Catalina. So Slooh members watching the 24-hour channel, don't disappear from there. You'll be able to see some great sights for the rest of tonight. Thank you very much to Trisha Ennis, our producer at Slooh HQ in the studio, for putting this show together at such short notice for us. Thank you very much for Slooh astronomer Bob Berman and his insights into this story. Keep an eye open on the Slooh website, slooh.com. There's more of this story to come, I think, and who knows, one of our viewers may have helped us pin down exactly where the Flea is tonight. So I'm Paul Cox, this has been Slooh. Join us again next week. Goodbye for now. This is amazing. The Slooh Santa scope has spotted some activity on the North Pole. It's jolly good news. Looks like Santa and his team are ready for launch. Whoa, and they're away. Okay, well, we've lost them for the moment, but be sure to check back in with Slooh as we track Santa on Christmas Eve. You can use Slooh's StarShare camera to come to Slooh and our special coverage tonight. We're breaking away from our usual live views tonight to bring you this live broadcast all about the near-Earth asteroid 2015 YB. But we prefer the name the Flea. Why the Flea? Well, it's small, fast, and very difficult to catch. And astronomers kind of feel like the Real Madrid footballers, the soccer player, the defense there, trying to cover Lionel Messi. So that's why it's called the Flea. Now, if you've got any questions tonight, just send them to @Slooh, and I or my guest, Slooh astronomer Bob Berman, will attempt to answer those for you. I did have one message from Jude Daly coming in a little bit earlier, and she asked, how can I get involved with hunting and monitoring these near-Earth asteroids? Well, Jude, anybody can join Slooh and use the telescopes that these live images are coming in from right now. And we have our own program there that trains you how to do it, everything you need to know, and you'll soon be helping to track and monitor these near-Earth asteroids. We're going to be talking all about what is it? What is the Flea? Where is it? How fast is it? When was it discovered? And what we're trying to do tonight in a moment when Slooh astronomer Bob Berman joins us. But I just want to remind Slooh members, don't forget you can use the StarShare camera. And any of these images that you see on screen, you can snap and download or share images of the Flea. That is if we catch it, because it's tiny, absolutely tiny. Now then, what have we got? Let's pull in straight away while we're looking at these live images from Slooh's Canary Islands Observatory. Let's call in Slooh astronomer Bob Berman. Hi, Bob.
Hey, great to be here. Very exciting, Paul.
It is. Now, this is a breaking story. So a near-Earth asteroid, Bob, you know, we're hoping to see it in these images, but we're going to be this.
Now the orbit's just being refined because it's so newly found. Its speed indicates it's probably asteroidal in origin. It certainly doesn't have a tail. It doesn't have an albedo, a brightness that would resemble a comet. Still, at 35,000 miles away, and this is the night of closest approach. I mean, you're right. 22,000 miles up are the nearest, or not the nearest. All of the geostationary satellites orbit at that distance. 22,000. This is 35,000. So it's barely 50% farther than our beloved Earth satellites that give us all our TV pictures. And we should also remember that when something of exactly this size burst over Chelyabinsk on February 15th, 2 years ago, back in 2013, it injured 1,500 people. And if it actually made it all the way to the ground, this was from Chelyabinsk, we'd be
Yeah.
seeing things like this on its way in. And if it actually made it to the ground, it could destroy a city. So we're saying
So
it's tiny. Sure, 20 meters or maybe around 60.
Well, this is going to be a really, really difficult one, but let's go back to basics for viewers who don't know what a near-Earth asteroid is, and let's maybe put people straight on the risk of this one tonight before we even get on to what it is. Is there any risk with this thing, Bob?
With this one, no, but it's awfully close. It's wow, only discovered 2 days ago, passing only, 1/5 the distance to the moon. The moon is so close. We astronomers talk about things in terms of light speed. The nearest star is about 4.5 light years away. The sun is 8 light minutes away. Well, if you could shoot light at this object, it would get there in half a second. It's not even a
I mean,
half a
Bob, this thing
light
is
second.
coming nearly as close as our geosynchronous satellites, isn't it? But what is this object? Is it, a lump of rock? Is it snow or ice like a comet? What is it?
Well, it's probably asteroidal, judging from its orbit, even